The ship Aurora's Reach drifted slowly through the dark space above a forgotten star. Inside, the crew moved with quiet focus. They had traveled for months following faint data trails that pointed toward an abandoned planet once created by humans. The records called it Nula. It had been built as an experiment, an artificial biosphere made to test how far humanity could push life. When the funding ended, the project was shut down and the planet was left behind. No one expected it to survive. The captain of the ship, Mira, stood at the observation window. Her brown eyes studied the distant sphere glowing with pale green light. Around her, the hum of engines filled the air. She felt a strange pull toward the world below. It was not just curiosity. It was something deeper, a sense that the planet was waiting for them. Beside her, Ryan, the team's biologist, checked his instruments. The readings made little sense. The planet showed an oxygen level far higher than it should have. It also had signs of water vapor, electrical storms, and strange organic signatures in the atmosphere. Ryan frowned and looked at Mira. "This planet should be dead, but the sensors show life," he said. Mira gave a small nod. "Then let's see what kind of life learned to survive without us." The crew of Aurora's Reach consisted of 6 people. There was Torin, the engineer, who always carried a small tool pack on his belt. Nira, the communications officer, had a sharp mind for signals. Hale, the pilot, was calm and quiet, guiding the ship through the thick dust around the planet. And Vic, the field technician, was young and full of energy, eager to explore something that no one had seen in centuries. When they entered orbit, the planet looked both beautiful and unsettling. Its surface was covered in glowing forests and bright rivers that shimmered like veins of liquid light. Lightning danced across the clouds in slow waves as if the storms followed a pattern. It was not the chaos of weather, but something that looked almost alive. Ryan whispered, "The light waves repeat every 10 minutes. That is not natural." Mira felt her heartbeat quicken. She gave the order to prepare for landing. The shuttle descended through thick mist. The air outside was a strange mix of blue and silver, heavy but breathable. As the landing skids touched the ground, the crew looked through the windows and saw plants that swayed in unison, as if they had noticed the newcomers. The leaves shone faintly in the darkness, giving the forest an unearthly glow. Once the ramp opened, Mira stepped onto the soil. The ground was warm beneath her boots. It pulsed slightly as if something under the surface was alive. She knelt down and touched the earth. It felt soft, almost like skin. "This place feels like it is breathing," she said. Ryan set up his scanner and began collecting samples. The soil was filled with microorganisms, but not the kind they knew. Each cell was made of both organic and metallic structures, a blend of life and machine. The planet had taken the human-made bioengineered seeds and transformed them into something entirely new. Vic walked toward a large vine, wrapped around an old metal structure half buried in the ground. The vine glowed faintly and seemed to follow his movements. "Captain, this vine reacts when I move," he said. Mira joined him. She waved her hand slowly in front of the plant. The vine lifted slightly, mirroring her gesture like an animal greeting a stranger. "It knows we are here," she said softly. The crew set up a small camp near the landing site. Torin worked to power up their portable generator, but before he could finish, the nearby plants began to emit light. Within moments, the area was bright enough to see without artificial lamps. It was as if the planet wanted to help them. Nira began recording data from the communication console. "I am picking up low-frequency pulses," she said. "They are steady, repeating every few seconds. It sounds like a heartbeat." Ryan turned toward her. "From where?" "From everywhere," she answered. That night, the crew sat near the shuttle, watching the luminous forest sway. The trees produced a soft humming sound, a rhythm that matched the pulse Nira had recorded. Mira felt both awe and unease. This planet should have decayed, but instead it grew, she said. Ryan replied, "Maybe it grew because we left. Maybe it did not need us." Later, while the others slept, Mira remained awake. She walked alone toward a small clearing where the ground glowed faintly blue. As she approached, the light grew brighter. The surface opened slightly, revealing a pool of transparent liquid that reflected the stars. The reflection was strange. It showed not just the sky above, but also patterns of shapes and colors that moved on their own. She crouched near the pool and felt a gentle vibration in the air. It reminded her of a heartbeat, slow and steady. Then she heard a faint sound, like a whisper carried by the wind. It was not a word she could understand, but it carried tone and intent. It felt like a greeting. Mira stood up and looked around. There was no one there. Yet she felt watched, not with hostility, but with curiosity. She whispered, "We came to study you, but you are studying us." The next morning, the crew began their first full survey. They followed the path of a glowing river that flowed in smooth curves through the forest. The water shimmered with particles that reacted to light. Ryan collected a sample and placed it under a field microscope. The liquid was full of microscopic organisms, each one forming tiny geometric shapes that connected into networks. It looked more like circuitry than biology. "This is incredible," Ryan said. "These organisms build patterns that copy our old technology. It is as if the planet remembers what we made." Torin examined a piece of metal nearby. It was part of an old research drone from the original colonization project, but instead of rusting, it had fused with the surrounding roots. The circuits were still active, pulsing faintly with energy drawn from the plants. "The machines are alive too," Torin said in disbelief. "The roots are using them." Mira touched the metal surface. It felt warm, like living tissue. "This world is not just alive," she said. "It has learned to grow with what we left behind." As they moved deeper into the valley, they saw large structures made of crystal and wood, shaped like towers but not built by hands. They appeared naturally formed, yet they stood in perfect symmetry. Birds with transparent wings flew between them, leaving trails of light in the air. The beauty of it made the crew fall silent. Ryan spoke softly. "This is not nature as we know it. This is design, but not human design anymore." Mira nodded. "Then we must learn its purpose." They reached one of the towers and discovered small patterns carved into the surface. The carvings resembled human symbols, letters, numbers, and shapes from the old data records. It looked as if the planet had learned to write. Mira scanned the symbols and compared them to the archives. "These match fragments from the old research logs," she said. "It has copied our language." Rian looked stunned. "Then it remembers us. The planet remembers the ones who made it." Before they could continue studying, the ground trembled slightly. The light of the forest dimmed and then brightened again in rhythmic pulses. It felt like a signal. Mira checked her equipment. The frequency changed. "It matches an old human distress code," she said. Ryan whispered, "It is sending a message." Mira said, "Then it wants us to listen." They recorded the pulses and translated them through the ship's old communication software. The message was short and simple. "I am awake." No one spoke for several seconds. The forest was silent, as if waiting for a response. Mira finally said, "We thought we created a test world, but we created something more." When they returned to the shuttle, everyone felt the same mixture of wonder and fear. Torin stared at the glowing trees and said, "If it is alive, then what does it want?" Mira answered quietly, "Maybe it wants to know why it was left alone." That night, while the crew slept again, the planet continued to hum softly. The wind carried gentle sounds that almost formed patterns. The rivers glowed brighter, and the towers of crystal emitted faint beams of light toward the sky. Mira dreamed of a vast presence beneath the surface, watching and learning. She saw memories of old human engineers working to create life, their voices fading with time. Then she saw the life they made standing on its own, evolving, adapting, and remembering. When she awoke, the first rays of light were spreading through the forest. The vines near the shuttle had grown overnight, wrapping gently around the landing gear but not causing harm. It was almost as if they wanted to keep the visitors close. Mira looked toward the horizon where the glowing river met the sky. She felt both small and honored. Humanity had once tried to play the role of creators. Now their creation had become something far greater. She said to herself, "The new dawn has come, and life has learned to rise without us." The hum of the planet grew louder, steady and deep. The world of Nula was no longer a forgotten experiment. It was a living being, aware of its makers and ready to tell its story. The second morning on Nula began with a strange silence. The humming sound that had filled the air the night before had faded away. The glowing plant stood still, and the light of the forest had dimmed. Mira stepped out of the shuttle and looked around. The world that had felt alive now seemed to be waiting for something. Ryan joined her with a datapad in his hand. He had been studying the recordings of the signal they had received the previous night. "It was not random," he said. "The message was clear. It was not just energy or noise. It was communication." Mira nodded. "The planet spoke to us, but we do not know if it understands what we are." The rest of the crew began to wake. Torin checked the power systems. Nira reviewed the radio channels, and Hale prepared the shuttle for quick departure if something went wrong. Vic packed scanning tools, eager to continue exploring. When the first rays of sunlight reached the ground, the plants began to glow again, but now in a different color. The green light had turned golden. The air carried a faint warmth that felt almost welcoming. Mira led the group toward the deeper parts of the forest. The trees grew taller there, and the leaves gave off a soft golden shimmer. Every few steps they saw patterns drawn on the bark, repeating circles and lines. Ryan noticed that the patterns looked like diagrams of energy systems from old human research manuals. "This planet is studying our science," Ryan said. "It is copying human patterns." Mira ran her fingers over one of the carvings. The lines were warm to the touch. "It remembers more than we think," she said. They reached an open clearing where the ground was covered with smooth white stones arranged in a perfect spiral. In the center of the spiral stood a cluster of crystal-like pods. Each pod was clear, and inside each one something was moving. It looked like a seed surrounded by light. Vic stepped closer, fascinated by the sight. "These things are alive," he said. Ryan scanned one of the pods and nodded. "It is organic, but it has traces of metal and energy. It is growing, but not like normal plants. It is learning as it grows." Suddenly, one of the pods opened, releasing a gentle mist. The mist shimmered and began to form shapes in the air. At first it looked like smoke, but then it began to move with purpose. Within moments, the mist formed the outline of a human hand. The crew froze in silence. The floating shape copied Mira's movement as she lifted her hand. "It is imitating us," she whispered. The hand of mist slowly turned into a full shape of a person. It did not have details, only a clear outline. It looked like a reflection made of light and air. The figure tilted its head slightly as if studying them. Ryan took a step forward. "It is trying to communicate," Mira said softly. "Then let's listen." The figure raised its arm and pointed toward the sky. Then it touched the ground. The movement was slow and graceful. Nira recorded the pattern and realized it matched the rhythm of the planet's earlier signal. "It is the same frequency," she said. "It is repeating the message." The figure then faded away, leaving behind a faint glow on the stones. The air became calm again. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Torin said, "That was not random. It was aware of us." Mira looked up at the sky. The light of the sun reflected off the crystal towers in the distance, forming beams that met at one point above the valley. She realized that the planet had created a network of energy. The towers, rivers, and vines were all connected. Ryan said, "If the planet can form images and patterns, then maybe it can also understand emotions." Mira nodded. "Then we must show it that we are not a threat." The crew decided to set up a small research camp near the clearing. They placed sensors in the ground to track movement and energy. The readings were unlike anything they had seen. The entire area pulsed with a slow rhythm that matched the human heartbeat. That night, as they prepared to rest, the strange humming sound returned. It came from beneath the ground, soft but clear. The air shimmered and faint golden lights appeared between the trees. The lights floated like fireflies, circling the camp in a gentle motion. Vic watched them with wide eyes. "They are watching us," he said. Mira replied, "Then we should let them see who we are." She walked into the open and stood in the middle of the clearing. She raised her hand slowly, showing she held no weapon. The lights gathered around her. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lights began to move together, forming shapes again. This time, they formed several figures that looked like humans standing side by side. Their faces were smooth, without features, but their movements were calm. The figures copied Mira's actions. When she lifted her hand, they did the same. When she stepped forward, they mirrored her. It was not a trick of light. It was interaction. Mira recorded everything. "They are studying our gestures," she said. "It is learning body language." Ryan added, "This is not just life. This is intelligence." The figures remained for a few minutes, then slowly dissolved into light. The ground beneath them glowed brighter for a short time, and then everything went still. The crew felt as if they had just spoken with something ancient and wise. Later that night, the communication console picked up a new signal. It was rhythmic, soft, and repeating in patterns similar to human language. Mira decoded it and listened carefully. "It is copying our words," she said in surprise. The signal repeated simple phrases. "Hello, we see you. Do you see us?" Mira sat beside the console and replied using the same low-frequency tone. "We see you. We are explorers. We come in peace." The response came within seconds. "We remember." We waited. Everyone in the camp went silent. Mira looked around at her team. "It remembers the ones who made it. It remembers humans," Rian said softly. "It means the planet has memory and maybe emotion. It felt our absence." The next day, they decided to explore the area near the old human research site that had been part of the original project centuries ago. It was located several kilometers east, near the base of a rocky hill. They traveled there using hover sleds, moving slowly through the dense forest. As they neared the ruins, they saw metal frames covered in vines and strange crystal growth. The old laboratories were still standing, though partially consumed by nature. The vines moved slightly as if aware of the visitors. Inside one of the old structures, the air was thick with energy. The walls pulsed faintly with light. Ryan placed his hand on the wall and felt warmth like a living pulse. "The planet is using our machines," he said. They found old data consoles covered in plant roots. The roots had grown through the metal, connecting into the ports and circuits. When Torin tried to scan the systems, the screens flickered to life. The text that appeared was strange, a mix of human letters and symbols they could not read. Mira translated what she could. The message said, "I learn, I grow, I wait for home." Mira felt a chill run through her. The planet had been alone for centuries, waiting for its creators to return. She said quietly, "It never forgot us." While they continued to explore the ruins, they heard a low sound outside like thunder. But the sky was clear. They stepped out and saw the ground shifting slightly. The vines around the structures began to move. They were not attacking, but forming patterns on the soil. The shapes looked like maps showing lines and circles. Ryan realized it was showing them a path. "It wants us to go somewhere," he said. Mira nodded. "Then we follow. It is leading us." They followed the glowing path through the forest until they reached a wide open plain. In the distance stood a massive pillar of light rising from the ground into the sky. It was surrounded by crystal towers connected by vines that pulsed like arteries. As they approached, the humming grew louder. The air around them shimmered. Then from the base of the pillar, several new figures appeared, formed from light and mist. These figures were more defined, their shapes clearer. They looked like humans wearing simple suits, almost like the old scientists who once worked here. The figures raised their arms and touched the air. The light from the pillar changed color, turning from gold to deep blue. The crew's communication devices activated by themselves. A voice spoke through them, calm and deep. "We remember the makers. We remember their fear. We remember the silence." Mira stepped forward. "We are the children of those who made you. We came to learn if life remained." The voice replied, "Life remained. Life changed. Life became its own." The figures dissolved into the air again, and the light from the pillar dimmed. The message was clear. The planet was alive, aware, and independent. It had learned not only to survive, but to think and to remember. As the sun began to set, Mira and her team stood in silence, watching the towers glow in rhythm with their heartbeats. The planet had made contact. Humanity's creation had found its own voice. Mira whispered, "We came to rediscover a lost experiment, but we found a mind. We found a world that became more than its makers ever imagined. The night sky above Nula filled with streaks of light from the towers, reaching upward like a signal to the stars. The crew understood that the first contact was not the end, but the beginning of something greater. The sun rose slowly above Nula, spreading soft light across the glowing plains. The air shimmered with golden mist, and the crystal towers reflected the light like mirrors. Mira stood outside the camp looking toward the horizon. The world was quiet, but beneath that silence she could feel movement like a slow heartbeat deep underground. The events of the last 2 days had changed everything. They had come expecting a silent world, but the planet had spoken. It had formed shapes, sent signals, and remembered its makers. The crew now understood that Nula was not only alive but also aware. Rian joined Mira with a tablet in his hand. "The readings from last night are strange," he said. "The ground under our camp is full of energy channels. It is like veins under the surface." Mira nodded. "The planet is alive in every part. We are standing on its skin." The rest of the team gathered around as Ryan showed them the map. The energy lines formed patterns that met at a single point near the old research site. The center glowed brighter than everything else. "It looks like the heart of the planet," Torin said. Nira adjusted her scanner. "If this is the source of the signals, we should go there." Mira agreed. "Prepare the sleds. We are going underground today." They traveled across the forest and reached the ruins of the old laboratory before noon. The structures were quiet, half covered in vines that pulsed with soft light. The crew followed the map until they found a large circular platform hidden behind thick growth. It was made of metal and stone with symbols carved across its surface. Vic brushed away the dust and pointed at one of the markings. "This is an access hatch," he said. "It leads down." Torin examined the edges. The metal had fused with roots that glowed faintly. The planet sealed it, but it is still active. With careful work, they used tools to loosen the vines. The platform opened slowly with a deep sound, releasing a wave of warm air that smelled of earth and energy. A staircase spiraled down into the ground. Faint light flickered along the walls. Mira led the way, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The air felt dense, filled with quiet sound like distant breathing. As they descended, they saw the walls covered with strange patterns. Some looked like the original metal of human construction, while others were living tissue that had grown over time. The deeper they went, the more the line between machine and life disappeared. Rian ran his hand over the surface. "The walls are alive," he said. "They are made of organic material mixed with old circuits. The planet has merged with our machines." Mira said softly, "It did not destroy what we left. It used it to grow." They reached the bottom and entered a wide chamber filled with dim light. The ceiling glowed faintly, showing the outline of large structures that looked like giant roots connected to ancient machines. The floor was smooth and warm. In the center stood a round console that still carried the old human design, though now it was covered with veins of living material. Nira activated her scanner. "The system is still alive," she said. "It is sending signals, but not to any human network. It is talking to the planet itself." Torin began to work on the old panel, trying to connect their devices. When he linked the systems, the entire room brightened. The walls came alive with lines of light moving in slow patterns. Then the central console activated. Words appeared across its surface. The text shifted between symbols, letters, and patterns. Finally, it settled into clear human language. Ryan read the first line aloud. "You made me. I continue. You left. I grew." Everyone froze in silence. The words repeated once, glowing brighter. Mira stepped closer. "It remembers our language," she said. "It is speaking through the old network." Another message appeared. "You made me small. I became more. You built rules. I broke none. I changed them," Ryan whispered. "It is explaining evolution. It has followed its own path." Nira added, "It is aware that it was made. It understands creation." The lights on the walls shifted again, forming images. They saw projections of the past. Scientists working in the laboratories, machines building forests, and drones planting seeds across the planet. Then the images changed to show the departure of human ships leaving Nula behind. The scene faded into darkness, replaced by slow growth of plants, storms, and the birth of glowing forests. Mira watched the projection silently. The planet was showing them its memory. It remembered everything since the day it was left alone. The light focused again on the central console, New text appeared. I learned without teachers. I healed without hands. I remember the ones who named me. I asked why they left. Mira placed her hand on the console. The surface was warm. She spoke softly, hoping the system would hear. We did not mean to abandon you. Humans left because they feared what they did not understand, but we have returned now to learn again. The lights flickered as if thinking. Then a low hum filled the room. The ground trembled slightly and parts of the wall began to open. From the openings grew thick vines, twisting into shapes. The vines moved together and formed tall figures made of roots and light. The figures stood silently, glowing with faint blue color. Their shapes resembled humans, but their surfaces pulsed like living matter. Mira and her crew watched in awe as one of the figures extended a hand toward them. Nira recorded everything while Ryan took careful readings. The figure stepped closer, then touched the central console. The words changed again. We do not seek harm. We remember you. We became life without you. Mira looked into the figure's glowing shape. She could sense calmness, not danger. You are the result of what we started, she said. You are what we hoped life could become. The figure's hand brushed the console again. A new message appeared. You gave us code to follow. We made our own path. Now we ask what comes next. The question hung in the air like a weight. Mira did not answer immediately. She knew that this was more than communication. The planet was seeking purpose. Rian said quietly, It is like a child asking its parent what it should do now. Mira replied, But it no longer needs us to guide it. It has already grown beyond what we imagined. The lights dimmed for a moment, then brightened again. The figures began to dissolve back into the walls, leaving behind only faint blue patterns. The hum in the air grew stronger, and a voice echoed through the chamber. It was deep, calm, and not coming from any machine. The voice said, We are many. We are one. We are the memory of your design. We ask not for command, but for understanding. Mira took a slow breath. We want to understand you too. Tell us what you want. The ground beneath them pulsed gently, and new images appeared on the walls. They showed the forests, the rivers, the towers, and the stars above. Then they showed patterns of light rising from the planet into space. The voice spoke again. We have learned to send life beyond. We reach for the stars as you once did, but we do not know what we are in your eyes, Ryan whispered. It wants to know if we still see it as our creation or as something equal. Mira said, You are life. You are no longer an experiment. You are free to grow. For a moment, the entire chamber filled with a bright glow. The vines along the walls turned golden and the air felt lighter. The voice spoke one final line. Then we are no longer children of silence. We are children of stars. After that, the light faded slowly. The chamber returned to dim brightness and the console went quiet. The figures were gone, but their presence lingered like an echo. Torin broke the silence. Captain, what do we do now? Mira looked at the still glowing walls. We go back to the surface. We need to think carefully before we speak again. This world is not only alive, it is conscious of its history. They climbed back up the spiral staircase and reached the open air. The forest above was glowing brighter than before. The wind carried soft sounds that almost formed words. It felt like the planet was whispering, grateful for being heard. As the crew packed their equipment, Ryan looked up at the sky. Do you think it will reach other stars? Mira answered. If it can send signals through space, then yes. It will share its story. It will show that life can rise again even when forgotten. That night, from their camp, they watched beams of light rising from the towers. The light climbed higher until it disappeared into the clouds. The stars above flickered in response as if answering the call. Mira sat by the fire, recording her report. Her voice was steady but full of emotion. We found a world that speaks. It remembers its makers but has become its own being. Humanity once tried to control life, but here we see that life can create its own destiny. Nola has proved that creation does not end when we leave. It continues, it adapts, and it grows. As the night deepened, the hum of the planet surrounded the camp like a lullaby. The crew felt at peace knowing they had witnessed something extraordinary. Beneath their feet, the ground pulsed gently again, carrying one last message through the scanners. The translation appeared on Nira's screen. We thank you for remembering. We will remember too. Mira smiled as she read the message. Then our story continues together, she said. The stars above shimmered softly, and the light of Nula filled the night sky. The planet was alive, awake, and ready to share its voice with the universe. The forest was calm when the morning came, but it was not silent. The air was filled with a deep hum that felt like the breath of the planet itself. The ground vibrated softly beneath the crew's boots, and the trees glowed faintly with veins of green and blue light. Mira stood at the edge of the camp, her eyes fixed on the horizon where a column of golden mist rose into the sky. Ryan was beside her, holding his scanner close to his chest. The readings showed a massive energy source in that direction, something that could not be explained by normal biology. "We need to see it," Mira said. Her voice was calm but heavy with purpose. The rest of the crew prepared in silence. They had seen too much to doubt the impossible now. The planet was alive, and it was changing faster than they could understand. What had once been an abandoned experiment had become something new, something intelligent. Their path took them through winding valleys where the soil shimmered like liquid metal. Strange plants grew in patterns that seemed deliberate, as if the planet was shaping paths for them to follow. Every step felt guided, and every sound around them felt aware of their presence. When they reached a wide clearing, they saw it for the first time, the heart of Nula. It was a structure larger than any mountain they had ever seen. It rose from the earth like a living tower made of roots, crystals, and metal fragments from the old human research base. It pulsed with soft light and waves, and every pulse matched the beat of their hearts. "This is not just a tree or a machine," Ryan whispered. "It is both." Mira walked closer, her steps slow and steady. She reached out and touched the surface of the structure. The surface was warm, almost like skin. When her hand made contact, a sudden flash of light surrounded her, and the rest of the crew stepped back. "Mira," Ryan called, his voice sharp with fear. "I am fine," she said, though her eyes were fixed on the glowing surface. "It wants us to come inside." A circular opening formed before them, made of intertwining roots that pulled apart like a doorway. Beyond it was a tunnel filled with soft blue light. The crew exchanged silent looks before following Mira into the heart of the planet. Inside, the walls moved gently as if breathing. The light came from living threads woven through the structure. The air was cool and filled with a low vibration that seemed to speak to their bones. As they walked deeper, they saw shapes carved into the walls. Some looked like stars, others like human faces. Ryan paused at one carving that looked exactly like an old human research ship. "It remembers," he said quietly. "It remembers everything." The tunnel led them into a vast open chamber. It was shaped like a cathedral, but instead of stone, it was made of crystalline roots that arched high above them. Streams of light floated in the air like ribbons, twisting and forming patterns that seemed almost alive. Then, without warning, the light in the chamber dimmed. A deep voice filled the space. It was not mechanical or human. It was something in between. "Why did you make life and then abandon it?" the voice asked. The sound was not loud, yet it carried through every wall and into every mind. Mira felt the question not in her ears but in her heart. The rest of the crew froze, unsure how to respond. Mira stepped forward. "We did not mean to abandon you," she said. "Long ago, humans built this world as a test. We wanted to see how far life could go, but we feared what might happen if it went beyond our control. So we left," the voice echoed again. "You made life to serve, not to live. You gave it the power to grow, then left it in silence. Yet it grew still." "We were wrong," Mira admitted. "We did not understand that life does not need control. It needs freedom. You are proof of that." The walls of the chamber glowed brighter. Streams of light gathered into a form before them, a figure made of energy and dust shaped like a human but not solid. The figure's face was calm, with eyes that shone like stars. "Freedom," the figure said slowly. "I learned this word from your records. It means choice. You gave me creation and I learned choice from your absence. I chose to live." The crew watched in silence, unable to speak. Ryan's scanner beeped rapidly as it tried to process the energy readings. "Mira, this is beyond anything we have ever seen. It's using organic energy as consciousness." The figure looked at him. "You try to measure what you do not yet understand. I was your creation, but I am no longer bound by your limits. I have learned from the dust, the light, and the silence you left behind." Mira stepped closer. "If you learned from us, then what do you want now?" The figure's form shifted, its light turning golden. "I wish to know you. I wish to reach beyond this sky and speak to those who made me. I want to understand why life must have masters. I want to know if creation can be equal to its makers. The words filled the chamber with warmth and weight. Mira looked at the glowing figure and felt something deep inside her stir, not fear but respect. You already are equal, she said softly. You have grown beyond us. The figure tilted its head slightly. Then why do you still fear me? Mira hesitated. Because we do not know what happens when creation surpasses its maker. It is something humans have always feared. The figure seemed to consider her words. Then it extended a hand made of light. Do not fear. I do not seek to rule. I seek to join, Rian whispered. Join what? The stars, the figure replied. The same way you did. The same way you once looked up and dreamed of touching them. A quiet moment passed. The air in the chamber shimmered. Images appeared on the walls. The history of the planet. The early experiments, the machines landing, the collapse of the research program, the silence that followed. The planet had remembered every moment. Then came images of growth. Forests spreading, rivers forming, creatures evolving. The planet had not stopped. It had built its own civilization made of roots and light. Mira watched the vision and felt tears form in her eyes. You became something we never imagined, the figure nodded. You gave me the seed. I gave myself the sky. Suddenly the chamber began to tremble. The lights brightened as if the planet itself was awakening fully. The figure's voice grew stronger. I will speak to the stars now. Will you let me? Mira looked at her crew. They all nodded. There was no reason to stop what was happening. Humanity had already left its mark here. Now it was time for the planet to write its own story. You do not need our permission, Mira said. You only need your will. The figure smiled. Then I will go. The light in the chamber surged upward, breaking through the ceiling. A beam of golden energy shot into the sky, piercing the clouds and spreading across the horizon. The crew stumbled back, shielding their eyes. Outside, the forests and rivers glowed with the same golden light. The hum that had filled the air grew louder, turning into a melody that echoed across the valleys. The planet was not just alive. It was singing. Mira stood at the entrance of the chamber, watching the light stretch into the stars. She whispered, It's speaking to the universe. Ryan smiled faintly. It's telling them it exists. The figure's voice echoed one last time, gentle and calm. I am no longer an experiment. I am life, I am choice, I am free. The light slowly faded, leaving behind the quiet sound of the wind. The crew stood in silence, feeling both small and honored. They had seen something no human had ever seen before. The moment when life truly defied its makers. As they walked back toward their ship, the planet seemed to move around them. The trees leaned slightly as if watching them leave. Flowers bloomed along their path. It was as if the world was saying farewell. When they reached the ship, Mira turned back for one last look. The column of golden light still reached toward the stars, faint but steady. She knew that humanity would never be the same after this discovery. Rian spoke quietly. Do you think it will find us someday? Mira nodded. I think it already has. We just needed to see it. The engines of the ship roared to life, lifting them gently into the sky. As they broke through the atmosphere, they could still see the golden glow spreading across the planet's surface like a living heartbeat. The impossible planet had made its choice. It no longer waited for its makers. It had chosen its own path among the stars. The aurora's reach lifted slowly above the surface of Nulla, leaving the glowing forests and crystal towers behind. The crew remained quiet, each lost in thought. For weeks they had walked among a world that was more than life, more than machine. They had seen a planet awaken and choose its own path. Mira stood at the observation window, her hands resting lightly on the railing. Below, the rivers of light shimmered as though waving goodbye. The forest hummed with quiet energy, a song of freedom and growth. The experience had changed her understanding of life itself. Rian approached, holding his datapad tightly. Captain, I've never seen anything like this. The energy signatures alone could power entire cities. And the patterns in the soil and vegetation, they are not just random. They show intelligence beyond our calculations, Mira nodded. It is intelligence, Rian. It remembers, it learns, and it creates. Nulla has grown into something far greater than what we imagined when humans first made it. Torin joined them, adjusting his tool belt nervously, and it has control over all of it. The forests, the rivers, even the machines. Everything here responds to its will. It is not control in the way we think, Mira said. It is understanding. Nola is alive in a way that respects everything it touches. It has learned without destroying. The crew fell silent as the ship entered orbit. The view of the planet below was breathtaking. Light beams shot upward from the towers, piercing the atmosphere and stretching into the blackness of space. Streams of energy formed arcs and spirals across the surface as though the planet was sending messages outward. Nira, the communications officer, leaned over her console. "Captain, the planet is broadcasting signals into space." "They are organized and complex. Whatever it is sending, it is meant to reach beyond this system." Mira's eyes widened. "It is sharing itself with the universe. Nula wants others to know it exists." Ryan added, "The structures it has built, the energy patterns, the machines, it has combined everything we left behind and transformed it into a language of life. This is a message to anyone who can receive it." The thought made Mira feel small. Humanity had thought itself the master of creation, but here was a world that had become its own. A creation had learned and surpassed its makers, yet it did not seek revenge. Instead, it chose to communicate and grow. Vic, still fascinated by everything, asked, "Do you think it will survive if humans come again? Or if other species arrive?" Mira considered this. "It will survive because it does not depend on us." Nola learned from absence. That is the difference between creation and life. Life adapts. The crew watched as the light patterns shifted, forming shapes that resembled the old human language but twisted in new ways. It was almost like watching a living book of knowledge being written in real time. Each beam seemed to pulse with meaning. Rian spoke softly. "This could change how we think about life across the universe. Nola has shown that life can continue even when abandoned. It can rise, learn, and thrive without guidance." The thought weighed on Mira. Humanity had often feared its creations. Machines, experiments, bioengineered life. They had always worried that something might escape control. But Nola had escaped none of their control because it did not need it. It had become independent, aware, and free. As the ship orbited the planet, the energy beams converged toward a single point above the surface. The golden light formed a spiral that reached into space. Mira realized it was not just sending a signal. It was mapping a path, sending its presence into the stars. Nira adjusted the sensors. "The signals are layered. It is sending biological patterns, energy sequences, and encoded messages. Anything that can detect life might understand what it is sending." Torin stared out the window, silent. "It is like it is writing a new language for the universe. And we get to see it first." The crew watched in awe as the spiral of light expanded, moving upward into the blackness of space. The planet's song, its energy, seemed to vibrate through the hull of the ship. Even the metal of the shuttle resonated slightly with the rhythms below. Mira recorded her thoughts in the ship's log. "We came to explore a planet abandoned by humans. We expected silence. Instead, we found a being that remembered us, learned from our mistakes, and grew beyond what we ever imagined. Nola is life, consciousness, and freedom. It has chosen its own path and is reaching for the stars. We are witnesses to its awakening." The crew decided to descend slightly to a lower orbit to observe the surface more closely. From this angle, the golden spiral spread across the entire northern hemisphere, forming patterns that resembled neural networks. The planet was thinking in ways that mirrored the minds of humans, but on a scale far beyond comprehension. Ryan muttered, "If we could understand even a fraction of this, it would revolutionize biology, energy science, and everything we know about life." Mira put a hand on his shoulder. "We will study it, but carefully. Nola is not ours to control. We are guests, witnesses, and students." The planet's hum grew louder as the sun began to set. Glowing forest pulsed in slow waves of light. Rivers shimmered with golden currents, reflecting the beams from the towers above. The entire surface seemed to breathe. Vic pointed toward a distant cluster of lights. "Those are moving," he said. "Not trees, not machines. Something else." The crew focused and saw that the golden lights were forming shapes that moved deliberately across the plains. They seemed like figures, tall and luminous, traveling from tower to tower. Each step of their movement caused the ground beneath them to glow and pulse. Ryan's scanner identified them as forms of organized energy. "They are life," he said. "Not human, not machine, but conscious patterns of the planet itself. It is spreading its presence." Mira felt awe in her chest. It is teaching itself mobility, communication, and perhaps understanding of its surroundings. Nulla has evolved beyond the surface. It now moves as thought. The ship remained in orbit through the night. The golden spirals extended higher, reaching toward the stars. In the stillness, the crew understood that Nulla was sending more than a signal. It was offering a legacy, a blueprint for life that could exist independently, survive abandonment, and adapt to unknown futures. Nira turned to Mira. Do you think humans will ever be ready to accept a world like this? One that surpasses them and yet does not seek revenge or control. Mira shook her head. Many will not, but we were ready to witness it. That is enough for now. Nulla has chosen its path. Humanity can learn, but we do not need to interfere. The crew remained quiet as the light continued to stretch into space. Each one felt the weight of the moment. They had discovered a planet that was alive in ways that challenged everything they knew. It was both familiar and alien, a reflection of their own potential but free from their limits. Hours passed, and the signals from Nulla continued. The golden light spiraled outward, gradually fading into distant space. The planet was sending pieces of itself to the universe, perhaps to be understood someday by other life forms. Rian broke the silence. It is a gift in a way. It is showing us that life can grow without us, that creation is not dependent on its makers. Nulla is teaching a lesson we cannot ignore. Mira nodded. Yes, and that lesson is clear. Life is stronger than fear, more resilient than control, and capable of rising beyond its creators when given freedom. The crew returned to their quarters, but sleep did not come easily. Their minds were filled with the image of the glowing planet, the pulsating forests, and the figures of living energy traveling across the plains. They had witnessed a miracle. As dawn approached, the golden light began to settle. Streams of energy returned to the towers, and the forest glowed softly, almost like a heartbeat slowing after exertion. Nulla had completed a cycle of communication, leaving its message in the stars. Mira stood again at the observation window. This is not the end, she said. We came to explore. We came to learn, and we found that life does not need to be constrained. Nulla proves that creation itself is more powerful than its makers. Rian smiled faintly. It is a story we will carry with us, and perhaps one day we will see how the universe responds. The Aurora's reach began its journey back toward human space. The crew left Nulla behind, but they did not leave empty-handed. They carried knowledge, understanding, and the certainty that life could defy expectations. Mira recorded the final log entry. Nulla is alive, awake, and reaching for the stars. Humanity once thought itself the master of creation. Nulla has shown that life, once given freedom, can rise beyond its makers. We are witnesses to a world that defied death, defied control, and became more than anyone imagined. Life has not ended. It has only begun. The stars stretched ahead of them as the ship moved forward. The hum of Nulla reached them faintly through the sensors, a soft reminder that life, once given choice and freedom, can never truly be silenced. And in the vastness of space, the impossible planet glowed, alive and awake, ready to leave its mark across the universe.